Zuleika drifted in and out of consciousness, aware of women's voices rising and falling around her, but too drowsy to understand their words. She had a body and a bed, or so it seemed, but her time in the ocean and in the snow afterwards had sapped so much of her strength that there was little else she could do aside from lie in bed and sleep. Not since the night the king violated her had she felt so weak. No man had taken advantage of her this time, though, she was certain. Years ago, in a longhouse, where victorious warriors believed they had the right to lie with any woman of their choosing on the night of a glorious victory, she had performed a tricky little spell on herself, intending it to be more of a precaution than necessary protection. Instead, Zuleika had woken to find a man writhing in agony on the pallet beside her, while lightning coursed over her skin. No man had tried to touch her since, so she wasn't sure if the spell would be quite so strong a second time, but the lightning flared into life when anyone approached her with harmful intent, warning them away. She hadn't felt the tingle of her lightning shield here. "She has such soft hands. High-born, no doubt," one woman said. "You should have seen the dress she arrived in. Silk it was, I'm sure, though the water ruined it. Some princess, perhaps," a second female voice remarked. "How'd she get here, then?" "Princess or no, she managed to make her way from the sea, through at least 3 locked gates, and into the master's rose garden. It must be magic, I tell you. Perhaps she is cursed, too." "Well, aren't you a bushel of sunshine, then? Maybe destiny sent her here to break curses, but she won't do none of that if you scare her." A snort. "I ask you, does she look cursed to you? Not a mark on her, and I undressed her and put her to bed myself. Blessed, more like. Maybe she's exactly what the master needs." The master could not have her, Zuleika thought, digging her teeth into her lip. A single drop of blood was all it took to recast that lightning spell. Her body might be weak, but the magic in her blood was as strong as ever. "Aren't you taking her tray?" the second woman asked. "No. I leave it a little longer. She might wake and want a bite to eat. If I ever slept as long as she has, I'm sure I'd be famished." "Has she said anything yet?" "No, not a word. Not even in her sleep. She's a mysterious maiden, this one." The voices faded as the women left, Zuleika presumed. Still, she waited until she could no longer hear them before she dared to open her eyes. The room looked as richly decorated as any of the rooms at the palace, though the bed hangings and the tapestries had faded over time. Whoever lived here was not as rich as they once were, or perhaps they'd simply placed her in one of their less sumptuous guest apartments. The walls were not plain stone, but plastered, so she definitely knew she wasn't in the king's palace. She sat up cautiously, relieved to find no lightheadedness. She didn't have time to be ill. She needed to find her father's ships, but for that she would need her strength.